And you know, Congress spokesperson Shashi Tharoor going on record saying that it's a welcome move which has been made by Mr. Modi. But the same points which were being made by the BJP when the BJP was in opposition are now being made by the Congress when the Congress is in opposition. Does that really matter, or do you believe, Dr. Sreeram, that all that has changed now because the BJP has a majority in Lok Sabha? So it doesn't really matter what the opposition thinks.
It's the usual good cop, bad cop routine that rotates between opposition and when you're in the treasury benches. I think everybody accepts, even the Pakistanis accept, on all those other countries with whom we've had problems, even the United States accepts that, you know, Modi on the election campaign is not the Modi who will be the statesman in, Racecourse Road. So I don't think that's so much of a worry for us. In fact, people are very positive about it. This morning I spoke to Pakistan High Commissioner and he was saying, everything positive expectation, we want to start, on a good note. And I think Mr. Sharif being a businessman, Mr. Modi also having a very projected as an economic animal, there's a lot that's going to happen from now onwards. If not so much on the security front, I expect a lot happening on trade and investment. Remember, India's trade with the SAARC countries has not been great. Just checking the statistics, $17.5 billion is all we do with the SAARC countries.
Dr. Sreeram, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee lost the election in 2004, and when L.K. Advani attempted to take over from Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he tried to recast his own image by going to Pakistan. And he went on a multi-city tour, and I was a part of the press delegation who accompanied Mr. Advani when he went to the Jinnah Mausoleum in Karachi and made those famous comments about Jinnah's so-called secularism, which ultimately landed him in a spot of bother. Now here is Mr. Modi, who has been criticized, who has been vilified for being this individual who cannot win the trust of minorities in India, who talks tough when it comes to issues like terror in Pakistan. Do you believe that this is nothing else at the end of the day, this entire exercise of inviting Nawaz Sharif by Mr. Modi, other than a simple attempt to recast his image, try and present himself as a more moderate and reconciliatory individual?
Sure, I think you can argue that it's a kind of a diplomacy of disarming your critics. That's always been necessary, especially when you are in the center now, because earlier Mr. Modi and the party was further to the right, and they have now repositioned. They are the new center in this country, and I think that's where they are able to now make a more statesman-like gestures to the neighbors and say, and remember, it's like the Reagan effect in America. The ones who have the hawkish constituency under their control are the ones who are able to actually deliver peace in the long run, because they are able to manage the backlash far better than if a left-of-center party like the Congress would do it. So I believe actually there's a possibility they're going to revive this. So I don't see this as a trivial gesture or as simply a ceremonial. This is the start of what is possibly going to be a long-term reorganization of the region. Remember, there's also a Chinese infiltration in our region, and I'm sure Mr. Modi's national security team will be saying, we need to consolidate our own backyard and to preserve it and to strengthen our own influence in this region. It's amazing that everybody has accepted his invite. I think it's unprecedented. It's like a darbar, where an emperor and where satraps and vassals are turning up.
Dr. Sreeram, what I picked up was that Mr. Modi's team was of the view that under Manmohan Singh's tenure, the equation which needed to exist between the three services chiefs and the Prime Minister, that equation did not exist. Could it be that Mr. Modi believes that he needs to have greater one-to-one interaction with all the three services chiefs, and therefore he believes that the best way to do that is to keep the defense portfolio with himself for some time?
Quite possible. I think if he's a reformer of existing state institutions, it's a misnomer to think that he's out to jettison the state itself. There are some people who have been criticizing him, saying he's neoliberal and he's all for private forces and market forces. The fact is, he believes that a state which is going in a particular direction can be redirected in a different way. So he's thinking that way, but remember, it also has policy implications. I mean, if he's in charge of defense, certainly we need a lot more modernization along the line of actual control so that we are able to keep up with the balance of power with the Chinese.
So doesn't it therefore suit then?
And the Navy. Remember, that we need to invest so much more in the Navy to be able to compete and to be able to hold our own as a major power. So I think he's going to push for all those things.
Just like what we've seen. Dr. Sreeram Chaulia is there, and Dr. Shiv Shakti Mishra as well. Let me just kick off with you, Siddharth, once again. And I was looking at this list, and somebody just SMSed me that one of the interesting names that's come up is that of General V.K. Singh, who is said to be given independent charge of something related to internal security. Now, it could be to deal with the Naxal-infected areas, like, say, in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. Do you believe that General Singh, and the kind of margin that he won by, do you believe that this is something that Mr. Modi really would have been forced to do? His hand would have been forced. We saw the number of instances of friction between different ministries. They were forever on the rise. So, say the Environment Ministry would be taking on the Coal Ministry, Power Ministry not seeing eye to eye with some other ministry. Do you believe that at least under Mr. Modi, with the kind of mandate he has got, the number of instances of inter-ministerial friction, that will certainly reduce?
We have a CEO of a prime minister, so naturally he's going to, I think, bring in all kinds of novel techniques to try and manage these contradictions internally. And clearly he's on the pathway to try and streamline a lot of things. And I think his message is that I mean business, from day one. And I think that's what we are seeing in this nitty-gritty we are going into. The bigger picture, if you draw back from it, is to say India has to move forward, and India has to be acknowledged as a major power in the world. And this is how I'm going to do it, by showing that I'm decisive, I have a will, and I have, some ideas. He's the ideas prime minister. And
He's
that's
an
what we are
ideas
seeing.
prime minister, but